With the Sundered changes and how common they are on this ladder due to the find item bug, covering Sorceress builds based around it should be, well, a given, especially single elemental ones, since they can play around with the new Sundered state when combined with skills and items. For today's video, we're going to look at the only one of these that really works as a budget option though, the Cold Sorceress. Now, why we chose this one over the other pure elemental builds is because they can still farm their normal areas, and with the right gear can be opened up to farming everywhere as well, but the Cold Sorceress is able to do this as soon as she gets her access to a Sundered charm thanks to Cold Mastery. And despite a very common myth, cold damage is not drastically lower in damage than the other elements at comparable equipment levels. This is because while the Fire and Lightning Sorceress will have bigger numbers solely from skill points, they are balanced around the masteries, and most people are not familiar with the damage values without them. And this is important because of how the damage types are calculated, which is basically your skill's base damage multiplied by your synergy bonus, and after that it's multiplied by the sum value of your masteries and item damage boosts. So an extra 30% cold damage is going to be significantly more impactful than an extra 30% lightning damage from gear, especially since Cold Mastery is focused on the other important aspect of damage output, which is enemy resistances. While the other elements require very specific gear to drop this value, and they generally come at a much harsher cost and gear slot penalty. So all that said, let's dive into the actual build and what you can expect as you journey through normal, nightmare, and hell difficulty. In normal difficulty, if you want to avoid doing respecs for your stats later, you will want to focus on just enough strength for your gear and dump the rest into vitality, usually alternating between them as you go, but by doing so you will need to be drinking your mana potions far more often. So sometimes you'll find the recommendation to just put points into energy as needed to help curb this a little bit, but as you get into the groove of nightmare difficulty, and well, beyond, you'll want to spend a stat and skill reset to go back to the vitality focus, since you will have access to not only warmth, but insight on your mercenary as well. But as said, in normal you will not have access to this. Instead, you'll be focusing on gear that provides mana per kill, such as tier runes on your gear and a fairly common modifier on jewelry as well as some crafted items. You can also find useful bonuses, not necessarily for your mana, in the form of common normal difficulty rune words like Stealth, which is made with Tal and Eth in a 2-socket armor, and Lore, which is something you'll make a bit later on in normal or early nightmare out of Ort and Soul. While a Leaf Staff is nice, it won't add much value to this build. So I usually favor just random weapons and shields, and if you have a glut of tier runes, you can throw these in them as well, since they are super common. Though remember, you are fairly limited in sockets in normal, so this will only go so far. Skill-wise in normal, you will be hurting on mana as a Cold Sorceress regardless of which skill you decide to focus on, and which skills you dump points into are going to depend on your plans for Nightmare, since you get your main damage skill at the end of the difficulty. If you favor Orb, you'll want to be dumping into Ice Bolt, even though it will not be super efficient during your early progress. If you favor Blizzard, you'll want to be dumping into Ice Blast, which is going to be your best standard fire skill, at least from a damage per second and mana cost perspective, for use between cooldowns of your, well, target skill. Now you may have noticed Glacial Spike being left out there. It's a bit of a trap and should only ever be invested in if you're aiming for Blizzard as one of your tools. This is due to its lower damage for more mana model from its Area of Effect skill, and Blizzard will generally just work better for Area of Effect. There is also the fact that it's the only synergy with Ice Blast that does not contribute damage either, so usually this is kind of towards the end of my investment pile. That said, during your progress, do not forget to start investing in Cold Mastery as well, since by the time you reach Act 5, you will be running against enemies that are fairly resistant to cold, and this will let you do significantly more damage to them, even though they usually are not cold immune at this point. As far as one-off skills, the only important ones are Warmth in the Fire Tree, as we mentioned earlier, and in the Lightning Tree you will want to pick up Static Field to drop enemy life by a fixed percent, and Teleport to allow you mobility to bypass any cold immunes you do run across in, say, Act 5 normal or in Nightmare throughout. Beyond one point in each of these, we will not be leaving the cold tree pretty much ever again with this build. As we get into Nightmare, we will not be high enough to use the Sundered charm. That just won't happen until Hell difficulty. And we will start seeing some cold immunes. You will just want to teleport past them. And this is fairly easy since even though there are a few, they aren't as common as they will be in Hell difficulty. As far as stats and gear, they're not much different, except now you want to start hunting for your standard caster gear. A 4-socket polearm or bow for making insight for your mercenary, which which I personally prefer the Act 1 Mercenaries for this, so you'll want to be looking for a good 4-socket bow. Hunter's bows and composite bows are great, or their exceptional counterparts are also pretty nice, since they are limited to 4 sockets. As far as the other bows, including the Amazon-specific ones, you need to get a very specific item level for them to guarantee 4 sockets, and it's usually more trouble than it's worth, at least at this point. You'll also want to start looking for the standard broadsword for Spirit. These max out at 4 sockets, and while there are options with longsword and crystal swords, they are a bit more annoying to deal with when you're just trying to get the basics done, with crystal swords able to get up to 6 sockets if too high level, and the longsword requiring dexterity investments you may not want to make unless you're going max block. As far as the rest of your gear, plus skills, resists, mana per kill, and if you can squeeze it in, faster cast are your friends, though as cold sorceresses, faster cast is not quite as important as it is with other sorceress builds, since in the end, the majority of your damage will be coming from skills with cooldowns like Blizzard or Orb, with your spamming skill generally only rattling off 1, maybe 2 shots in between regardless. As you play through Nightmare, you should continue focusing on whichever cold skill you decided you wanted to focus on. With Blizzard, that means taking Blizzard up to max, getting Ice Blast topped off too, and trying to get Cold Mastery at least over 100% penetration to let you take down non-immunes as fast as possible. After that, I would start investing in the other synergies. If you plan Blizzard Orb combo, then you'll want to get Ice Bolt and Orb leveling up to make it pretty strong as well, but this should be a lower priority. And of course, if you were Orb primary, you should already be topped out on Orb and Bolt, so you'll be wanting to decide on your secondary skill. Whether that's a second element or dipping into Blizzard or Frost Nova, it's up to you. For the sake of this video, we are going the simple route of Blizzard Orb, but I will be doing updated versions of the hybrid builds from the past in this format as well. Moving on to Hell difficulty, after dodging the immunes in Nightmare, we should be getting our Sundered Charm online if we have it. If not, you're going to start struggling now since we're not dual elemental. This mostly just means teleporting past cold immunes to reach the bosses you want to kill, which can be annoying, but it's the reality of what mono-elemental builds have to deal with in Hell, especially if you don't have any killer gear for your mercenary. But now that we're in Hell, since we're going Blizzard Orb in the long run, and now that we're starting to stack up some plus skills hopefully, the goal is to have a total of minus 195 cold resist after mastery and gear, and of course after your plus skills. This maximizes your damage even against immunes. Everything else should be going into your cold skills and their synergies, saving Glacial Spike as your last point of investment since its mileage is, well, very limited for this build between all of our other effects. As far as stats, for the Cold Sorceress, you want to aim for 156 strength to equip a Spirit Monarch, and everything else is going to go into life. Or if you're going for maximum block, you'll be doing a ton of dexterity, since you'll need to reach maximum block with Spirit with a ton of dexterity. Either can be fine, though your life will hurt a bit if you go max block, at least until you get your chase gear at the end. Speaking of chase gear, plus skills like Stones of Jordan, Arachnid's Mesh, plus skill amulets, whether casters, Maros, or Talrashas are fine, and plus skill armors like either Enigma, Chains of Honor, or really any plus skill armor is fine as well, though you could do Ormus. I find it a bit less convenient to target. Boots are whatever you need, whether that's resist boots or war travelers or even just silk weaves like I have here because I had them laying around and I was being lazy. It's fine. And of course, our gloves are going to either be Mage Fist to boost warmth or Train Ghouls for cold resist and faster cast, which if we're using Sundered is more promising if you don't have a way to get that resist. Our big chase items, though, are actually our weapon and helmet. There are a few options that are okay, such as Heart of the Oak, Spirit, or even Doom Runeword in the weapons, but the one that will get you the most mileage is Death's Fathom, especially if you can get a good cold facet for it, since this will greatly increase your cold damage to take advantage of your ability to drop Sundered enemies to negative 100% resist. And if you have a 5% Rainbow Facet, that's 1 less level of Cold Mastery and 1 more level in Glacial Spike. Similarly, we have Nightwing's Veil on our head, again with Rainbow Facet if possible, for the same reasons, but it also does get a big boost to cold damage and provides plus skills, much like Death's Fathom. This is far and away outperforming Shaco, even though that provides a bit more magic find. Beyond that, it's Skill Charms, Torch, Annie, the usual there, an Insight Mercenary of your choice to keep your mana up so you never have to drink a potion again, at least for mana, and decimating everything in the game, even at players 8 once you have your Sundered Charm, without nearly the high rune cost of competitive fire or lightning builds. The nice thing about this build is you don't need all these chase items to farm even the most cold immune zones in Terra zones. You just need a few plus skills and a Sunder Charm, and, well, the resources to survive incoming damage, of course. This won't be as easily accessible in Season 3, but thanks to the bug in Season 2, Sunder Charms are fairly easy to come by, especially if you don't mind bad cold resist, which generally won't bite you in the butt since most of them are shorter range or less common. So, do you have a skill you'd like to see a build based around it? Mention it down below and I will try to give it the same treatment as we did here, and if you want to see my favorite sleeper build of the Sundered patch at least, check out the video on screen now, and as always, keep gaming, have fun, and peace out. This has been Alzorath. Bye.